The fields behind the old village were a map of things forgotten. Wild grass taller than my shoulders, electric lines dangling from rotting poles, patches of earth so soft they swallowed your boots with each step. I shouldn't have been out there. No one went past the fence anymore. But the dog ran ahead, and I followed, calling her name until my voice got lost in the hush of dusk. When I found her, she was pawing at something half swallowed by dirt and time. A rusted iron circle, flush with the ground, nearly invisible beneath layers of moss and leaves. At first I thought it was just another scrap of rural junk. But then I saw the worn handle, the faded yellow paint, the black letters almost eroded by rain. A hatch. She barked once, low and uncertain. I squatted, brushed aside the debris. The metal was cold, colder than the air, colder than the earth itself. I pressed my ear to the surface and thought I heard something. A hum, faint as a memory, rising from below. I should have walked away, called the dog, forgotten it. But something in the silence pressed against my mind. Curiosity. No. Recognition. I pulled. The hatch groaned, hinges shrieking like old bones. The air that rushed up was thick with rot, rust, and a sour electric tang. The dog backed away, hackles bristling. My phone's flashlight barely cut the gloom. The ladder descended into pure blackness. I hesitated, one hand on the rung, the other gripping cold metal. Somewhere in my chest, a childhood dread pulsed. The kind you only feel when you're about to do something you know is a mistake. The kind you ignore because you're afraid of being afraid. I climbed down. The iron shut above me with a sound like a final word. The first thing I noticed was the temperature. Not cold, but clammy. Air thick with moisture, pressing in from every side. The smell. Ferrous, fungal, something else beneath it, like old breath trapped in walls for decades. My phone's beam traced a narrow corridor. The concrete was cracked, black veins creeping through it, patches of moss slick beneath my boots. Water dripped, echoing into forever. I kept walking, and the light bounced off signs in Cyrillic. The paint still just legible. Emergency exit. Sector of food storage. The place was old, but not empty. A mug on a shelf, rim stained. Boots in a puddle, their soles worn thin. A jacket, neatly folded, draped over the back of a plastic chair. I called out, "Hello?" My voice was eaten by the bunker, swallowed in the damp hush. No answer. Only the hum, louder now everywhere at once. I should have left, but I kept going. The next door was heavy, painted yellow, the handle slick with condensation. I tried it. It opened with a soft click. Beyond. A larger room, the floor strewn with papers gone soft and illegible with mold. A radio on a table. A sleeping bag, unzipped, empty. The dog wouldn't come inside. She whimpered at the doorway, eyes wide and white. I tried the radio, twisting dials out of habit more than hope. It hissed static. Then, just for a moment, something else. A single tone rising and falling. Almost like a voice, if you listened long enough. I stood there, shivering. The walls seemed to pulse around me, as if the bunker was breathing. That was when I noticed the writing on the wall, barely visible beneath a century of mildew. "Don't go down." My flashlight flickered. A chill slid down my spine. Something creaked behind me. A footstep, or maybe just the building settling. But I knew, deep in my chest, that I wasn't alone. I looked back at the ladder. The hatch above had closed itself, iron teeth biting the night shut. No light came from above. I wasn't sure how long I stood there, heart beating too fast, lungs aching for air that tasted like memory. The hum grew louder. In the corner of the room, behind a heap of crumbling cardboard boxes, I saw a stairwell spiraling down, farther than my flashlight could reach. The walls around it were wet, streaked with something dark. The writing on the wall repeated itself, in a child's shaky hand. "Don't go down." I should have listened. But I was already moving, one hand trailing the damp wall for balance, the other clutching the phone's weak light. Each step felt like a question I couldn't answer. The stairs circled down, farther than seemed possible. The deeper I went, the more the sounds from above faded. The rain on the fields, the breath of wind, the uncertain scratching of the dog's paws. Down here, it was only the bunker and me, and the electric hum, growing fatter, vibrating in the marrow of my bones. My flashlight caught glimpses. Broken shoes on the steps, a child's blue mitten turned gray with time, a can of peaches swollen and splitting. There was a smell, faint, chemical, sweet, and rotting at once. Every few steps, I found another line of writing, scratched or scrawled on the walls. Go back. It waits below. Remember. My lungs ached for fresher air. It wasn't just the damp. It was memory. Something clawing at the back of my skull, trying to surface. I shook my head, pressed on. The stairs ended in a metal corridor that bent sharply to the left, then the right, like the tunnel didn't want to be mapped. My footsteps echoed, thin and distant. The walls here were lined with pipes, all sweating, a thin rivulet of brown water leaking along the seams. I passed empty rooms, their doors open or torn off the hinges. Some looked almost normal, like the end of a shift was only a moment ago. A cup of cold tea, a chessboard with a single pawn missing, a notebook open to a page with nothing but circles, drawn over and over. Other rooms felt wrong. Furniture stacked in pyramids, mirrors turned to face the wall, blankets nailed over vents. In one room, the air was so cold it burned my throat. A child's tricycle, its wheels coated in dust, sat in the corner. On the wall above it, a family portrait, the faces smeared and blurred, except for the eyes, which were scratched out in thick black marker. I blinked. For a moment, the air shimmered, and I thought I saw a figure, small and quick, dart past the open door. My heart stuttered. I forced myself to keep moving. There was a phone mounted on the wall, the old rotary kind. The cord was cut, but as I passed, the receiver swung gently, as if someone had just put it down. The corridor bent again. Suddenly, a blast of cold air, almost fresh, washed over me. It was coming from an open doorway, where a heavy curtain of plastic strips fluttered. I slipped through and found myself in a much larger chamber. This must have been the main operations room. Desks lined the walls, covered in rotting paperwork and toppled computers, their screens dark, their innards exposed like rib cages. An old intercom system hung from the ceiling, dangling at eye level. My light flickered. For a second, the hum of the bunker synchronized with the failing beam, and I felt like I was being watched. Not just by the empty screens, but by the room itself. A map hung on the far wall, dotted with pins and bits of faded tape. Most of the cities were labeled in a language I couldn't read, but one had a name I recognized. My town, marked in red ink. Below the map, a clipboard. The top page read, Shift Roster. Do not leave before replacement arrives. Names had been crossed out, one by one, until the last was left blank. I shivered. A slow realization dawned. These rooms hadn't been abandoned. Not at first. Someone or several someones had stayed too long. Maybe they'd never left. A door at the back of the room was bolted shut, but the lock was hanging open, the metal twisted as if melted by impossible heat. There were more stairs beyond. They spiraled down, narrower this time, steeper, the walls closer. I couldn't see the bottom, only a watery gleam far below, as if a pool had swallowed the lower steps. Before I descended, I felt a compulsion to look back. One last chance to climb up, to forget this place. But the hatch above was gone, replaced by a seamless slab of concrete. There was no way out now except down. I started to descend, one slow step at a time, the light growing weaker with every spiral. The hum followed, softer now, but more insistent, like a lullaby for those who never made it out. Halfway down, my phone buzzed in my hand. No service, no bars. But a message appeared on the screen anyway. Do you remember the password? My heart thudded. My hands shook. I didn't remember, but something inside me did. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I saw the door. It was painted yellow. In its center, a child's handprint, smeared in something dark and dried. A voice echoed in the dark, too soft to be real. Don't go down. I turned the handle. The yellow door opened on silent hinges, almost eager. The light from my phone cut a narrow tunnel into the darkness, barely touching the walls. I stepped inside, and the smell changed. Not just rot, not just mold. Something sharp and metallic, like blood on rusty iron. The room beyond was smaller than I expected. The walls were lined with shelves, each one crowded with objects. Old gas masks, ration tins bloated and broken, jars of clear liquid, labels washed blank by time. In the corner, a battered cot, springs exposed, sheets thrown aside in a panic. My breath fogged the air, though I could no longer feel the cold. Every sound was wrong. Too loud, too slow. I crossed to the far wall. Here, someone had scratched words deep into the concrete, so hard the wall flaked around each letter. We cannot leave, no matter what we remember. A soft noise behind me. A scuffle, or the settling of dust. I spun. My light caught only the shelves, trembling ever so slightly. I tried to convince myself it was just the shifting air, but the silence felt watchful, crowded. At the foot of the cot, a child's shoe. Not rotten, not covered in dust, recent, almost new. I crouched. As I did, something shifted in the cot's shadow, just outside the cone of light. A soft, careful sigh. I froze. The darkness there seemed denser, bending around the shape of something not quite visible. I felt the urge to speak, to call out a name I didn't remember. My phone buzzed. Another message, again with no service. It knows you're here. My pulse jumped. I backed toward the door, hand outstretched. The shadow beneath the cot stayed still, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched from multiple angles. Eyes behind the shelves, under the mattress, from the very cracks in the walls. I slipped back out into the corridor, breath hitching. The hum was louder, no longer a background presence but a living, pulsing sound. The walls vibrated with it. The pipes rattled in time with my heart. I passed another doorway. This one was ajar, and behind it, stairs spiraling even farther down, this time so narrow I had to turn sideways. The air pressed closer with each step, until it felt like I was being squeezed down a birth canal made of concrete and steel. The deeper I went, the more the corridor twisted. Doors branched off at strange angles, each marked with a single cryptic number. Some were locked, some wide open. Behind one, I saw a pale handprint on the inside of the glass. A child's, fresh and glistening. I called out, "Is anyone there?" My voice was muffled, absorbed by the bunker's wet walls. A sound answered, too soft, too high-pitched. Not a word, not quite a cry. The corridor bent sharply, then widened into a chamber that shouldn't exist, far larger than the space beneath any field. The ceiling arched high above me, supports lost in shadow. In the center, a huge table, covered in what looked like maps and blueprints. Most of them were ruined by water damage, but one stood out, a diagram of the bunker itself. The corridors, the rooms, even the hatch I'd entered, marked in neat, careful lines. But there was more. Beneath the bunker, someone had drawn a second set of tunnels, narrower, more organic, curving in ways that made no architectural sense. At the center of this hidden network, a single, blacked-out chamber, unlabeled. A voice in my head, not my own. "Down, down. You have always known." I heard footsteps, light, uneven, approaching from behind. I spun, shining my light, but there was only the corridor, wet and empty. Yet the footsteps didn't stop. They echoed closer, then faded. A child's laugh swallowed by static. The maps on the table shifted, as if a breeze had passed, though the air was dead still. I noticed a note, scrawled on the back of a blueprint in looping, childish handwriting. "Remember the song. It's the only way back." I didn't know what song, but when I looked away from the paper, I could almost hear a melody, 3 notes whistled soft, far away. The same tune I used to hum to myself in the dark, long ago. Or had someone else hummed it to me? My phone flashed one more time. "Go to Sector B." The message faded, then reappeared, over and over, each time with the text more distorted. I pocketed the phone and followed the map's directions. The entrance to Sector B was a heavy steel door, its handle sticky with something dark. Above it, someone had nailed a child's drawing. Stick figures holding hands, all faceless except for one, with a circle for a head and a jagged mouth drawn in thick red ink. I took a deep breath and pushed open the door. Inside, everything changed. The lights, old fluorescent tubes, flickered to life, buzzing with an angry, insectal hum. The floor was carpeted in mold, green and white, except for a single path worn clear by many feet. On the walls, photographs, hundreds of them, in cracked and yellowed frames. I moved closer. Every photo showed the same place. A field, a bunker, sometimes people standing in front, sometimes empty. In every photo, the sky was the same color. Heavy, iron gray. As I stepped down the hall, the hum in the walls grew more frantic. My phone's battery drained in seconds, dying with a sick little chime. The world shrank to the narrow pool of light cast by the overhead tubes. I passed a door with a nameplate I couldn't read. The letters scratched out. Beyond it, a room filled with toys. Dolls, cars, blocks. All ancient, all broken in subtle ways. Missing an eye, an arm split down the center. On the far wall, a mirror. I saw myself, face blurred and twitching, as if I were underwater. Behind my reflection, a second shadow, taller, arms too long, head cocked to one side. I spun around. Nothing there. Only the sense of being studied, measured, judged. At the end of the hall, another door, this one locked with a keypad. On the wall beside it, words scratched deep. If you remember, sing. A tune rose to my lips before I could stop it. The three-note melody from the paper. I hummed it, voice trembling. The lock clicked open. The door swung inward, revealing a staircase spiraling down. The darkness below felt almost alive. I stepped inside. The steps creaked under my weight, but I kept going, clutching the handrail. The spiral felt endless, more like the inside of a shell than any human-made construction. My breath echoed, ragged and shallow. The darkness pushed back at the weak ceiling light, refusing to let go. When the stairs finally ended, I entered a long, low corridor. The air was different here, hot, dry, tinged with a smell like scorched plastic. My skin prickled as if the world had grown thin. A steel door waited at the end, its window fogged over with age. I wiped a circle clear and looked through. The room beyond was lit by a single bare bulb, swaying slightly as if from a distant earthquake. Shadows circled on the walls. I heard faint music, a music box, or maybe the wind playing with broken glass. The door wasn't locked. I pressed inside. Rows of metal cabinets lined the walls, each one labeled with peeling tape, personnel, supplies, incident reports, memory logs. Some stood open, their contents spilling out in ragged paper drifts, curling with age and damp. In one corner, a desk piled high with files, all stamped with the same red warning. Do not remove from bunker. And there, on the back wall, hung the map I'd seen in the blueprint, now life-sized, stretching nearly floor to ceiling. It was hand-drawn, pencil on yellowed paper, the lines wobbly but determined. The main bunker, a tangle of corridors and rooms, labeled in two different hands, one neat, one childish. And beneath it, those twisting, organic tunnels, blacked out entirely at their center. A note, pinned to the map with a rusty tack. If you go further, you must remember who you were. The urge to turn back pressed hard on my chest. I looked behind me. Already, the corridor seemed longer, the stairs steeper, the way up melting into shadow. I forced myself to focus. On the desk, a photograph. For people standing in front of the bunker's main entrance. Their faces had been burned away with a cigarette, leaving only smears of brown and black. In the bottom corner, the same childish handwriting as before. You promised not to forget. I turned the photo over. On the back, a date. Not my birthday, but it scratched at something deep in my memory. I had been here before. Not just in dreams or nightmares, truly here with these people once. A sudden rush of static snapped my attention to the corner. An old intercom speaker, crusted in rust, crackled to life. "Can you hear me?" The voice was soft, young. A boy's voice, uncertain, almost hopeful. I approached, throat dry. "Who are you?" A pause. The sound of breathing, shallow, uneven. "You left. You said you'd come back, but you left us here." My mind raced. I tried to reply, but only a whisper came out. "I didn't know. I don't remember." The speaker hissed. "That's why you're here now. To remember. To finish." Static swallowed the words. Then, softly, almost lost in the fizz, the Sector B. Below. "Open the red door." I turned. On the far side of the room, nearly hidden behind a stack of metal bins, was a narrow red door. Smaller than the rest, child-sized. The paint had run in thick drips down the sides, as if the door itself had bled. My hands shook as I reached for the handle. It was cold, but not with the chill of metal, colder, somehow like something drawn from the deep earth. I pulled. The door opened with a sigh. Beyond. A stairwell dropping straight down, walls smeared with hundreds of handprints. Large and small, clean and smeared, some bright as rust, others dark as tar. The air was warmer here, heavier. My mouth tasted of pennies. On the first step, a child's toy, a wind-up mouse, painted blue. I nudged it. It skittered across the step, spun in a circle, then fell silent. The steps below vanished into blackness. I checked my phone, but the screen stayed blank, refusing even the mercy of a dead battery's glow. I clutched the useless rectangle tight and started downward, following the handprints. With each step, the sense of memory grew. A broken rhyme surfaced in my mind, something from years ago, chanted in the dark to keep monsters away. Red door, open if you're sure. If you turn and run away, you'll never leave this place. I descended. The world above faded, replaced by something deeper, older, waiting just beneath my thoughts. Below, a faint red light pulsed, growing brighter with each step. At the bottom, the tunnel widened. The walls here were rougher, stone instead of concrete, glistening with a wetness that shimmered like oil. Roots pushed through the cracks, dead, twisted, grasping at the air. The hum was gone now, replaced by a slow, rhythmic thud, like a heartbeat, deep and heavy, echoing from beneath my feet. I stepped forward. A child's voice whispered from somewhere ahead, neither welcoming nor cruel, just tired. "Are you ready to remember?" I stopped, listening, heart pounding to the rhythm of that impossible thud. Ahead, the tunnel bent sharply, shadows thickening where the red glow could not reach. My steps slowed, cautious, the air so heavy it felt like walking through a fever dream. The ground beneath my boots was slick, soft in places, moss or something older, spongier. I kept my back to the wall, fingers trailing over wet stone. Somewhere ahead, water dripped in a steady rhythm, 1, 2, 3, like a broken metronome, counting down something I had yet to recall. I turned the corner. The tunnel opened into a small chamber, its walls furrowed with roots and jagged cracks. The source of the red light was an old camping lantern, battered but still glowing, perched on an overturned crate. Next to it sat a boy. He looked up when I entered, face smeared with dirt, hair wild and sticking out in angles. He wore a yellow raincoat, far too large for him. Bare feet, toes curled against the stone. His eyes found mine, dark and bottomless, wide as wells. He didn't move, didn't flinch, just studied me in silence, as if trying to recall my shape. I forced myself to speak. "Who are you?" He tilted his head, considering, then pointed at my chest. "You know me," he said. "You just forgot." A wave of nausea rolled over me. Something about his voice, the timbre, the quiet certainty, dug up memories I'd worked years to bury. He patted the crate beside him. "Sit." I did. The cold from the stone seeped into my bones. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a crumpled photograph and handed it to me. My hands shook as I took it. 4 figures in the picture. 3 adults, 1 child, all standing outside a squat, concrete bunker. One of the adults, a woman with dark hair, had her arm around the boy. All the faces were blurred except the child's. I looked closer. It was the boy in front of me. It was also me. "You left," he said, voice small. "But you promised you wouldn't." I stared at the photograph, memories clawing their way up. A rainy day, the grown-ups arguing in harsh whispers, the dog barking outside, the click of a latch sliding home, a door, red as blood, slamming shut, the sound of my own voice, echoing down the stairwell, calling for someone to come back. I shut my eyes, but the memory kept going, hands pulling me away. A voice, my own older rougher, saying, "We can't wait, we have to go." But I'd left something behind. Someone. I opened my eyes. The boy hadn't moved. "You forgot me," he said, not angry, just matter of fact. "You forgot us all." The heartbeat in the stone grew louder, almost painful. I tried to explain. "I didn't know." He cut me off. "But you did." Silence. The red light flickered, casting long shadows that danced across the walls, making the roots look like grasping fingers. He stood, suddenly taller than I'd realized. He beckoned. "Come. There's more to remember." He led me deeper into the tunnel, the lantern swinging in his hand, painting streaks of bloodlight across the stones. The air thickened, the tunnels narrowing, walls pressing close. We passed more handprints on the walls, fresh and old, some overlapping, some so faint they looked like stains. At one point, the boy stopped, lantern raised. A narrow door blocked our way, iron warped with numbers welded into the surface. I knew them. My birthday. The boy turned to me. "Do you remember the song now?" I shook my head, afraid of what remembering might bring. He pressed his palm to the door. It swung open with a sigh, revealing a room that shouldn't exist underground. A child's bedroom, lit by a flickering bulb. Toys scattered on the floor, a bed with a threadbare quilt, a picture of a sun tacked to the wall, a rocking chair in the corner moving back and forth. No one sat in it, but a deep groove in the dust marked where feet had pushed for years. The boy sat on the bed, motioned for me to sit beside him. "Why did you leave?" he asked. I stared at my hands, at the filth beneath my fingernails, at the blood on my knuckles that wasn't there a moment ago. "I was scared," I said. "I thought if I left, I could forget. I didn't know you'd still be here." He looked at me, sadness filling his eyes. "We're always here waiting. For you. For someone to remember." The bulb above us popped, plunging the room into darkness. I felt a hand slip into mine, small, cold, familiar. The boy's voice whispered in my ear, "It's time to go deeper." The floor beneath us trembled, and the room began to dissolve. Walls peeling back, floorboards turning to soft earth, the ceiling lost in a swirl of red mist. I held the boy's hand tight as the world shifted around us, and together, we fell into the next memory. We fell, but there was no wind, just a suffocating, liquid silence. The darkness wasn't empty. It pressed against my skin, heavy, expectant, like the inside of a closed mouth. I tried to scream, but all that came out was a cloud of dust. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the fall stopped. I landed hard, knees biting into rough concrete. The boy let go of my hand and vanished into shadow. I blinked, trying to focus. My ears rang with phantom echoes. Laughter, cries, the distant clang of metal doors. I was in a hallway, not the bunker's harsh industrial corridors, but something softer, more familiar. Wallpaper faded to the color of old bruises. Family photographs lined the walls, each face turned away, blurred beyond recognition. The floor slanted gently downward. The lights overhead buzzed and flickered, never quite bright enough to see what lay ahead. A memory, I thought, but the longer I stood there, the less sure I became. I walked, boots squelching in puddles that had no source. Each footfall sent ripples through the floor, as if I were moving over water, not wood. The doors along the hall stood half open, each revealing a fragment. A girl sobbing on a bed, an old man staring at an unplugged television, a woman washing blood from her hands in a cracked porcelain sink. Every room was wrong in a different way. Time stuttered. Shadows stretched and shrank. At the end of the hall, a door pulsed in time with my heart. On its surface, in chalky letters, a message. Remember why you ran. My hands shook as I turned the knob. On the other side, a kitchen drowned in moonlight. My mother at the stove back to me. A radio hissed in the corner, spitting static and fragments of a lullaby. The smell of burnt sugar and old fear filled the air. I took a step forward and my mother turned. Her face was a smear. Eyes too wide, mouth sewn shut with threads of shadow. Don't, she whispered, though her lips never moved. You left the door open. I wanted to tell her I was sorry. I wanted to ask what door, but the words stuck in my throat, clotted and sour. The boy's voice echoed from the hallway, gentle but implacable. You know what door? The kitchen flickered, shimmered, dissolved. I stumbled backward. Now I was outside, in the rain, clutching a rusty key. The grass was slick, the sky pressing down, and the bunker's hatch yawned open before me. Someone, my father, stood at the edge of the field, face lost in shadow. Go, he said, but I heard the plea beneath the command. Don't look back. I ran, down the ladder, into the cold. The bunker swallowed me whole. The scene buckled, twisted, like film melting in a projector. I was falling again, tumbling through snatches of memory. A small hand slipping from mine in the dark. A dog barking, desperate. The scrape of metal on metal, a lock sliding shut. Shouts, then silence. Footsteps retreating, always retreating. Each memory landed like a blow. With every one, the tunnel around me shifted, narrower, deeper, the stones sweating, alive. At last I hit bottom, gasping. I found myself standing in a circular room. The only light came from a bulb swinging overhead, casting shadows that moved in ways that didn't match my own. All around the room, children's drawings, dozens, maybe hundreds, tacked to the walls, curling with damp. Each picture showed the same thing, a figure. Sometimes a child, sometimes a formless black shadow, trapped behind a door. Sometimes the door was red, sometimes yellow, sometimes just a jagged hole in the earth. Outside the door, other figures walked away, their backs turned, faces blank. I reached out, touching the nearest drawing. As my fingers grazed the paper, the room grew colder. The shadows lengthened, thickened, bled across the floor. A child's hand gripped my wrist, cold, insistent. The boy was back, eyes shining in the sickly light. Will you open it now? He asked. His voice was barely more than a breath. I nodded, unable to lie. He led me to the center of the room, where a trapdoor waited, iron, ancient, ringed by fresh footprints. My own, I realized over and over. The boy placed his hand on the latch. Whatever's down there, he whispered. It's been waiting for you a long time. The bulb above us exploded in a shower of sparks. Darkness surged up. The trapdoor yawned open. We climbed down. The rungs were slick, each step vibrating with the steady thud of that impossible heart. The air was thick and close, old sweat, damp earth, a bitter undertone of something burnt. The darkness pressed so tightly that I lost all sense of space. It felt like I was climbing down the throat of a living thing. At the bottom, my boots squished into mud, so cold it stole the feeling from my toes. The lantern's glow from above faded quickly, swallowed by the pitch. The only sound was my breath, ragged and panicked. The boy was already there, crouched at the edge of a shallow pool that stretched across most of the chamber. The water was still, the color of old coins, its surface broken only by a ring of child-sized handprints pressed into the mud. The walls curved, not like concrete but the inside of a great hollow root, fibrous, pulsing faintly with red light, as if the earth itself was drawing breath. I shivered, wrapping my arms around myself. What is this place? The boy didn't answer at first. He reached into the water and fished out something small. A toy car, red paint chipped away, wheels jammed with silt. He turned it over in his hands, as if searching for a memory in the grooves and dents. "This is where the forgotten things go," he said finally. "Things that get left behind. People, too." I stepped closer, peering into the pool. Below the surface, more objects glimmered. A keychain, a shoe, a photograph sealed in a plastic sleeve. The face in the picture was smeared and distorted by water, the eyes wide and pleading. Other shapes floated deeper, too big to be toys, not quite right for bones. The shadows shifted, becoming hands, arms, faces, then dissolving back into the muck. "Why did you bring me here?" I whispered. The boy set the toy car on the water. It floated for a moment, then slowly sank. "You have to see. You have to remember what you did. Otherwise, you can never leave." A wave of panic hit me. I wanted to run, to claw my way up the ladder, but when I looked back, there was nothing but solid earth behind me. No trapdoor, no rungs, just the trembling, breathing walls. The boy stood and beckoned. He walked to the far end of the chamber, where a narrow passage waited, no more than a crack in the root wall, pulsing with faint red light. I hesitated, but he turned, eyes dark with knowing. "It won't let you hide," he said. "Not here." I followed him through the crack, my shoulders scraping both sides. The tunnel narrowed and twisted, taking sharp turns, sometimes opening into hollows where I glimpsed more memories. Half-seen shadows, fragments of laughter, doors slamming, sobs muffled behind hands. At last, we emerged into a round vault, smaller than the chamber before but somehow much colder. In the center stood a single chair, old wood polished to a dull sheen by countless hands. Above it, a bare bulb flickered, stuttering out more shadow than light. On the wall behind the chair, another door. It was nothing like the others, no paint, no handle, no lock. Just a slab of black iron, cold and absolute. The boy stopped a few paces from the chair. "You remember this, don't you?" My mind reeled. Images flashed me as a child, sitting in that chair, hands in my lap, staring at the black door while voices whispered behind it. Promises, threats, secrets meant only for the dark. "You're the only one left," the boy said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They all went through. You stayed behind. Why?" I wanted to answer, but my throat closed. Shame welled up inside me, thick, choking, familiar. The bulb above us buzzed and flared. From the other side of the iron door, something knocked. 3 slow, deliberate raps. The boy climbed into the chair, feet dangling. He looked up at me, eyes wide with something like pity. "It's waiting for you," he said. "It always was." The knock sounded again, louder. The chair began to rock, slowly at first, then with a steady rhythm. Each creak echoed in my chest, shaking loose memories I tried to bury. I stepped closer to the door, my hand reaching out without my permission. The iron was cold as a grave. Words bubbled up in my mind. Words I'd once said, or maybe only dreamed. "If you open it, you have to go through. No coming back. No more forgetting." The boy's voice, close in my ear. "Are you ready?" The knock came one last time, thunderous and final. I pressed my palm against the iron, and the door began to open. The door swung open, slow and silent, as if the bunker itself was holding its breath. Inside, there was no room, no floor, no walls. Just an abyss of red-lit fog, swirling like breath on a frozen night. The air smelled of old blood and dying electricity. I stood on the threshold, unable to see where the ground ended, or if it ever began. Somewhere in the haze, something moved. A shape, tall and thin, arms too long, face a shifting blur of features. Sometimes a child, sometimes a man, sometimes just a hollow mask. The boy's voice echoed behind me, distant now. "This is the place between forgetting and remembering. You can't leave until you choose." The figure in the fog beckoned with a hand of shadow and bone. My legs moved. I stepped over the threshold. Instantly, the air thickened, pressing on my chest, squeezing my thoughts into slivers. Every step I took felt like wading through syrup. I lost all sense of time. Memories crashed through me in chaotic waves. A night with rain hammering the roof, Someone calling for help down the hall. My own voice, smaller, frightened. Hands holding mine, then letting go. The fog thinned, and suddenly I was standing in a replica of my childhood living room, only twisted. The ceiling too low, the walls pulsing with slow breaths. On the couch sat my mother, eyes hidden in shadow, knitting a scarf from strands of black hair. My father stood by the window, back turned, staring into a blank wall where there should have been light. The boy stood by the doorway, watching me. "You left us here," my mother whispered, though her lips never moved. "You shut the door. You let it happen." I tried to say it wasn't true, but the words tangled in my throat. The television flickered, static and screams. The dog barked once, sharp and accusing, then fell silent. I looked at the boy, and he was older now. My age, face lined with guilt and loss. "I was scared," I said. "I thought if I just forgot, it would go away, that none of this would be real anymore." He shook his head. "It's real for all of us. Every day you bury it, it just grows stronger. Every day you pretend it never happened, the door opens a little wider." The living room dissolved, replaced by the bunker again. Corridors endless, rooms repeating, doors opening onto the same grief, the same ache. People I almost remembered drifted past. Friends, strangers, faces I'd seen only in dreams. All of them with eyes like empty keyholes. The figure in the fog stood at the far end of the corridor, now impossibly tall, its head scraping the ceiling, hands dragging along the walls. It spoke in a chorus of voices. My mother's, the boys', even my own, echoing backward through time. "Say it. Say what you did." I closed my eyes, the truth crashing through me like floodwater. "I left. I ran. I shut the door. I thought only of myself. I thought I could outrun it." The bunker shuddered, dust falling from above, walls bowing in and out as if trying to take a breath. The voices fell silent. The fog swirled, thinning to a single thread. The boy, now fully me or maybe always me, stood beside the shadow, hand in its hand. "You can stay," he said, "or you can go. But if you leave, you take all of us with you. You remember forever. There's no more hiding." Behind me, I heard the creak of the rocking chair, the faint, sad sound of a child humming, the scrape of a door closing. The shadow extended a hand. I hesitated, staring at the door behind me. Still open, but the bunker beyond was darker now, full of voices waiting for my answer. I reached out. The instant our hands met, pain exploded in my chest. Memory surged. Faces, rooms, the sound of the storm, the smell of earth and rust. All the things I'd tried to lose. The abyss split open. I fell, not down, but through years, through rooms, through every door I'd ever shut, through every memory I'd ever sealed away. At the end, I landed in the same muddy field where the story began, the hatch yawning open, the dog barking somewhere out of sight. But I wasn't alone anymore. The boy was there, standing beside me, eyes clear, a thin smile on his lips. The shadow lingered at the edge of the woods, arms folded, waiting. I turned to the bunker, knowing the truth at last. This place would never let me go until I owned every part of what I'd left behind. The dog whined, nosing at my hand. The boy's voice was soft, closer than ever, maybe inside my head. "Now you choose." The muddy field glistened under a low, ash-gray sky. For a moment, it was as if the years had reversed. The air was sharp and cold, full of unspoken warnings. The hatch gaped open at my feet, dark as the mouth of something waiting to swallow. The boy, myself and not myself, stood at my side. The dog whined, ears pinned back, as if she could sense what waited beneath. The world felt fragile, like a photograph overexposed to the sun. I looked back once at the forest. The shadow figure was gone, leaving only trees whose branches curled like hands reaching for something they would never hold. The bunker behind me seemed smaller now, more ordinary, but the sense of weight was the same. All my life, it had pressed on me, a burden without a name. I crouched beside the boy. "Why here?" I asked. Why bring me back? He looked up, eyes older than any child's. You never left, he said. Part of you always stayed here, with us, with what you tried to forget. I swallowed hard, the taste of iron in my mouth. Rain started, cold and fine, beating on my jacket and the boy's too large raincoat. Somewhere, the faint echo of a lullaby drifted through the trees. Is there a way out? I asked, voice barely a whisper. The boy pointed at the hatch. You can leave the field, or you can go down again, but you'll always carry what's below. He pressed something into my hand. A key, old and black with rust, warm from his grasp. If you open the door, he said, be ready to remember, be ready to stay. I stood, feeling the heaviness in my bones. The field seemed to stretch forever. For a second, I imagined walking away, through the grass, into the blank horizon, never looking back. But my feet wouldn't move. I turned to the hatch and climbed down, boots scraping the metal rungs, heart in my throat. The darkness was familiar now. My own breath echoed in the shaft. At the bottom, the tunnels were silent. The hum was gone. The rooms I'd passed through before, the storeroom, the corridors with handprints, the flooded chamber were changed. Empty, washed clean by time, as if the bunker itself was letting go. Only the lowest room still waited. I walked its spiral, memories flickering on every wall. The girl's face, blurred by tears. A door slammed, a scream echoing down concrete. The child's drawing of the red door, stick figures walking away. At last, I stood again before the iron door. But now it was just a scar in the wall. No lock, no handle, just the ghost of a threshold. I pressed the key into the stone, more out of instinct than hope. The stone shuddered and split, revealing a narrow passage lined with mirrors. In each mirror, a different version of myself. A boy, lost and calling for help. A teenager slamming the door. A grown man walking away. At the end of the passage, the boy waited. His eyes met mine, and for the first time he smiled. Not with triumph or sadness, but acceptance. You remember now, he said. I nodded, unable to speak. He stepped aside, revealing a final doorway. Beyond it, a gentle gray light. Not the cold of the bunker, not the fire of guilt, but something softer, easier to bear. I stepped through. The world was quiet. Grass beneath my feet, sky wide above. No hatch, no bunker, just the echo of rain, the feeling of something released at last. The boy was gone. The dog appeared at my side, tail wagging, and I knelt to hold her close. In the distance, the trees sighed in the wind, no longer grasping. I looked back once. There was nothing behind me, only the field and the slow return of morning. I breathed in, feeling the weight lift. Not gone, but shared, no longer just mine. I walked home, leaving the bunker and its ghosts in the earth. I knew I would remember, and for the first time I wanted to.